We have over 30 brand new details, hours worth of gameplay info and a ton more thanks to the recent reviews, gameplay videos as well as all of the leaks that happened in the past few days. What's up everybody, welcome back to a brand new Cyberpunk 2077 video. Today is the final day before release, or well, the final almost 2 days before release depending on your region, but let's jump right into it with 30 big gameplay details that you absolutely need to know, and of course no spoilers or anything. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on it, and let's begin with the loot. This is gonna be huge. In Cyberpunk 2077 there is a ton of stuff to collect, which is also helped by a pretty extensive inventory system. You can find items and things almost everywhere, including stuff on the ground, inside boxes or caches, drawers, cabinets, wardrobes, random meds or bullets scattered around the place, and even weapons, very similar to games like Fallout if you played any of them. You can also loot items from enemies such as guns, clothing pieces, or even upgrades that you can later apply to your character. Like for example, you might find something like a really cool vest or really awesome weapon and then realize that that vest or weapon could be of legendary quality and provide some really amazing stats. When looting dead bodies, you can sometimes even get something called archived conversation shards. Again, if you played games like Fallout, this provides a little bit more immersion in the universe of the game, as in they show the last conversation that NPC had with a different character prior to their death, which sounds quite interesting. But we've talked about weapons, let's expand a bit on that. Weapons are so abundant in Cyberpunk that you will literally find yourself switching to a new one almost constantly as you level up. Item cards for weapons show everything from the name, rarity, weapon class, level requirements, DPS and damage, special abilities, oftentimes a quote or a reference very similar to Borderlands, weight, and finally the price. Weapons fall into several categories. This includes power weapons, tech weapons, smart weapons, and the melee. Now, without going into too much detail, think of it as this. Power weapons make bullets ricochet off surfaces, so you can shoot people in really strange kind of ways. Tech weapons can be charged up and release a much more devastating shot than they would normally. Meanwhile, smart weapons require a proper cyberware installed to make them link to your character, but will also cause bullets to track your enemies in really cool kinds of ways. Finally, we have the melee weapons, including everything from katanas, baseball bats, and other similar blunt or sharp objects that you can use against the enemy heads. Of course, not to be confused with upgrades like the mantis blades or projectile upgrades, which are cyberware that you install on your character at a Ripper dock, but are still extremely effective. Weapons can also have parts added to them like scopes, silencers, magazines, handles, and so on and so forth, many of which you can actually craft yourself using the engineering skill tree, and we will definitely make a guide on that in the upcoming days. Moving on next, let's talk about open world and a ton of details that you will encounter over here. As I've said in previous videos, right off the bat in the first few hours, there's going to be an overwhelming amount of objectives on the map at the same time. This includes your main jobs, which is basically your main story, the side jobs or the side quest, and then we also have a really nice number of street gigs. This includes guns for hire, search and recover, thievery, sabotage gigs, merc jobs, convoys, NPC scanner hustles, and a ton more on top. So if you feel that you don't have enough to do in Cyberpunk 2077, you're gonna be in for quite a surprise, because there is a ton of stuff to do, to the point that yes, you will get overwhelmed. Also in the open world, there are tons of vending machines all over the place that you can use to get a quick drink for some really nice boosts. This includes everything from health increase, health regen over time, stamina increase, and even stamina regen over time, among possibly other things in there too. On top of the vending machines, there's also delivery drop points where you can swap out your character's inventory, such as clothes and weapons, with that of your main stash. Now, the main stash is something that you can quickly access in V's apartment or with the trunk of your car, but again, there's also these drop points that can do the same thing, and you can quickly switch your inventory out if you don't have enough room in your regular inventory that your character carries. Also, Also, on the same note, you can hold a lot of items just in your regular inventory, including at least a handful of guns at any given time and dozens of consumables and crafting mats, but you can only use up to 3 weapon slots at the same time. That lets you switch between these in combat. Furthermore, you also have access to 2 throwable slots, like grenades for example, and up to 7 clothing pieces slots, of course including the special one that covers your entire body. Moving on next, let's also talk a bit about enemies, and there's a disclaimer that I want to give everybody. First of all, do not expect the most complex enemy AI in the world, because it's probably not going to be the case, even though it's not the worst I've seen so far. The good news is that increasing the difficulty also makes the enemy AI way more aggressive, so if you're looking for a challenge, you can switch the difficulties in the pause menu at any given time without much restrictions. Now, this doesn't mean that the enemies don't have advanced patterns. Of course they definitely can have, and they usually will display some form of patrol system, especially in main missions. So what this means is that if you are patient, and especially so if you play as a stealthy kind of character, you can play the waiting game, and once they break off from their group, or even more so when they head into a different room, this can open up opportunities for you to take them in a more silent kind of way, or even take them one by one before anybody even notices that. Once you are given the chance to take down an enemy, you can also choose to just knock them out instead. That is of course if you aim for a no-kill kind of playthrough. Of course, the enemies will continue to breathe and maybe even spasm on the ground, but they will continue to be unconscious for the entire duration of the rest of the fight. You can also pick up human bodies, by the way, if you have the proper skill investment, and maybe hide them out of line of sight to avoid alerting the other enemies. Speaking of that, let's talk a bit about how enemy detection actually works, and of course it's quite similar to other games out there. It's pretty basic. It works on a line of sight kind of basis, so as long as you stay in stealth mode, avoid enemies' vision, and even more so if you don't cause too much noise, most of the time they won't be able to detect you. At the same time, if you do manage to pass in front of them, they will become alerted of your presence, case in which you will see a yellow exclamation mark appearing over their head, and when you stay for too long in front of them, that becomes red, case in which everybody will be alerted by your presence and will actively attack and search for you. Furthermore, you can also break the line of sight again, and eventually they will go back at their spots, but they might still stay in that alert kind of state. That means that they will detect you faster the second time you do this. You can also scan enemies, by the way, if you have the proper implants. NPCs of course will have quite a bit of detail to them, but the gang leaders are going to be the ones that have the most. So when you scan something like, for example, a thug, you will see everything from gang affiliation, abilities, weaknesses, resistances, and you might even see, for example, possible rewards like the amount of $dollars that you might get from just taking down that enemy, among other things. Moving on next, clothing and fashion is going to be a big part of Cyberpunk 2077, and there are going to be a ton of clothing vendors all around the Night City that you will eventually want to visit, of course presenting a really wide range of possible options. So if there's a fashion trend that you want to follow with your character, it is probably in there, and you can definitely do so, of course still respecting the Cyberpunk theme. Now, clothes are going to be mainly for armor. They seem to provide armor as their primary stat, and usually at the lower qualities they don't really provide anything else. But once you get rares, epics, and even legendaries, they can provide really awesome additional benefits. Among these, you can find anything from increased carry capacity, mod slots, and maybe even boosts to XP gains, especially when it comes to the street cred that you might want to. Finally, let's talk a bit about some of the other crazy stuff you can do in Night City, and even though I don't like making comparisons to GTA, there are quite a few parallels to be drawn. First of all, there are plenty of districts filled with sex workers, so you can definitely just walk up to them and ask for their services using, of course, the appropriate dialogue options. In this case, you'll get presented with a full-on scene that, well, I guess you'll have to wait and see just a little bit more. You can also cause a lot of havoc in Night City, much like in GTA, but yeah, killing pedestrians will cause the NCPD to throw everything they have at you, and what this means is that no arrest warrants only bullets and maybe some nightsticks to the spine. But meanwhile, in gang-controlled territories, you can attack any random group of thugs and they will actually attack you back as well. Surprise, surprise, that can happen too. Be prepared for a big shootout and definitely get some proper weapons, because you will get overwhelmed if you go in too low level or don't have the proper upgrades. But yeah, this is it with more than 30 details about Cyberpunk 2077. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Of course, plenty more coming later down the line, and tomorrow we have the big day, the big release day, again depending on your region and where you are. But thank you so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.